Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We are broadcasting from the Concierge Landscape Studios, brought to you this hour by Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. We're talking about a story that we brought up last week as well, which states that as of this last March, all swimming pools in public areas must comply with new standards adopted by the ADA and is going to be enforced by the Justice Department. Among the rules, pools with greater than 300 linear feet of wall must have a second means of access, either an ADA-compliant lift or a ramp. For pools that are larger, they're going to have both required and not just one of those. And we're talking in the last segment a little bit about this, and Tony, you were just ready to tell us about a story.
Well, yeah, we were talking about whether these requirements are reasonable out in the real world, and we were talking about handicapped parking spaces that are unused. Mm-hmm. They're not necessary 100% of the time. So it brought to mind a project I was working on in the past, building a 4-unit condominium. Just a small infill type building. I looked at doing this. I was working with architects to do this. And it was going to have 3 residences and 1 commercial, ground floor commercial space. It was going to have room on this infill lot, which means a city lot, mm-hmm. That's already built around. There was going to be room for, I believe, 6 parking spaces so that each of the residences could have 2 parking spaces, except for one little catch. It would be required to have 1 handicap parking space, which we know is larger than other parking spaces. Yeah. So that meant it would actually cause the loss of another parking space. We would only be able to have 5. Now, these units were going to be sold, not necessarily to someone with a handicap, but each parking space would be attached to a condo. Mm-hmm. So what happens in the real world is if I buy condo number 1 and that handicap space happens to be the property that's attached to condo number 1, I get the handicap space, and maybe someone who buys condo 2 doesn't get the handicap space. Do you see what I'm saying? Or I sell it, or condo 2, which doesn't have a handicap space, has a buyer that wants a handicap space. It gets to be
or you get to a
untenable.
Situation where that handicap space is set aside, but you have just 3 owners, and
that's right.
Nobody's handicapped. And a space that can't be used.
And the space that can't be used. Exactly right. That's exactly right. So there's some things. But with this pool idea, it's going to be a huge project for anyone with a swimming pool, any property with a swimming pool. And it's still unclear whether homeowner associations are going to be affected. Isn't it?
Yes, to some degree. We are going to give you some further information and let you be the judge of that, folks. But I mean, again, the cost, we're talking about thousands of dollars. They said tens of thousands of dollars to retrofit with, could be $10,000 just for one lift. Yeah. The idea of a ramp could be very costly too, even though we know that there are portable lifts that an individual can own.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact, isn't it?
Yeah, and instead of just making a reasonable accommodation saying, here, you can set that up when you want to use the pool and take that up when you go, which to me would be reasonable.
Or it sounds like even the hotel could own the portable lift and just bring it out when it was needed.
Yes, which would be much more cost effective. That's not even considered
That's not being
good
allowed.
Enough because, and again, that goes back to this idea of are we getting too sensitive? I think in this. Again, this PC world we live in, I think we are.
Yeah,
and
in some ways, yes.
But let's deal with this. Again, you brought up the point that there are some association attorneys that were saying that they didn't think that this was going to apply, right?
Yeah. What do you think about that?
What was key in this article by the Washington Post, it asks the question, what is a public accommodation? The ADA law itself defines it as a private entity whose operations affect commerce. In other words, money's involved, okay?
Okay.
And fall within one of the 12 categories. So you're thinking, well, if it's a private residence and all of these are private residents in a homeowner association, then I guess it wouldn't apply, right? Because no commerce
doesn't involve
involved.
commerce. Okay.
But now you have to take a look at these 12 descriptions, and you know what? I would think that there could be a good case made otherwise.
A couple of them seem to apply?
Yeah. And so here's what it is. This comes from the homepage for the ADA here. It says, what are public places of public accommodation and commercial facilities? It says the ADA applies to new construction, alterations of places of public accommodation as a place or a facility operated by a private entity whose operations affect commerce and which fall within at least one of the 12 categories. So is this something that you see, at least one of these items, in a number of associations? It says, number 1, an inn, hotel, motel, or other place of lodging. Okay. Within a building that contains not more than 5 rooms for rent or hire.
Except for in a building that, all right.
Which is actually occupied by the proprietor of the establishment. So it's not just a hotel or motel. Place of lodging. Are there homeowner associations that have extra units available for rent?
For guests?
For guests.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. Who is... is there commerce being exchanged? Yes, there is.
Yeah,
money is
probably
being
charging
exchanged.
A fee. Yep.
Who is this for? Is it for homeowners? No, they all have their unit. This is for someone who is not.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you get the idea. So, would this be one of the exceptions? I think it very
possibly.
Well. Number 2, a restaurant, bar, serving food or drink. Are there, let me go on to another one. It talks about a bakery, grocery store, clothing store, hardware store, dry cleaner, bank, barbershop, beauty shop. You get the idea.
Where services are provided to the public. Yeah.
The thought that came to my mind is, how about a multi-use condominium association? Mixed use.
So where there's stores, laundry, bakery, grocery store, beauty shop on the ground floor.
we manage properties like that where there is a restaurant among other things on the first floor, but the other units are individually residentially owned, but the units where these businesses are running, they're owners of the association.
There are also units in the association.
Their unit is just not a residential unit. It's a place for them to have business.
So there the line is blurred.
So here it says, if you see this available for commerce, then that property would fall under consideration. How about this idea? It also deals with the idea of, it says an auditorium, convention center, place of public gathering. Is there something called a party room, a community room? Is that available for a fee many times?
Sure.
Is that open to the public?
Maybe.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. And it
even if you're offering it only to your members, if you're charging a fee, all of a sudden that commerce comes in there, right?
Yeah. Here's another one. It says a daycare center, senior citizen center. Okay, senior citizen center. You have a number of 55-plus buildings that are available for senior citizens. Now, I guess it would I venture to say that most developers, again, because I believe in the free market, have probably taken that into consideration, that people are going to have needs.
Yeah.
But here's again a perfect example of our government not just wanting to allow the free market to determine that,
Well, and that's a very good point on the whole issue. If people with disabilities wish to stay somewhere where they have access to the pool, isn't there going to be some providers out there that are going to make sure that they provide access to their pools so they can trap that business? Yeah,
I mean, if you want to beat out your competition, if you want to make more money, aren't we all in business looking for new niches, new opportunities? And if we can see something that someone else can't, we are going to pursue that.
Sure.
And then what happens is competitors notice it, they begin doing the same. And again, the whole idea in a free market is the understanding the consumer benefits.
Yeah.
And so some of these these ideas, it makes you ask the question, are they really necessary? Is it not overkill?
Yeah.
And again, with just the few things that we talked about, and there's so many other things listed here, but those things, Tony, couldn't it be construed, do you think?
I think so. And in fact, there's a couple other issues here or items listed that are not in the ADA regulation, but are the it was examples of situations where an association might be held liable, and that is
what I tell you what. Before you do that, it looks like we've got to go to another break. So let's do that, and when we come back, I'd like you to go through those other examples.
All right.
We're talking about the ADA and the requirements on public pools and how that might affect you living in a homeowners association. More after these messages.